Joining us now for more on this is the Shadow Education Minister, Jonathan Duniam. Jono, good to see you. Let's start with net zero. As we've just heard there, Chris Bowen said today that any future targets would be updated as we go. So if Labor can't put a target on paper, what does it say about this fantasy, let alone this uncosted 2035 target he's taking to New York?
Well, I mean, as you know, with the 2035 target, we rejected that immediately on the day because, you know, I've spent the last few days reading the modelling and the advice that the government was provided. It's contingent on all of this speculative data, all of these assumptions, hoping the planets line up and the cow can jump over the moon. The problem is there is so much in doubt here, putting aside the fact and the point that you made earlier, which is that if Australia complied with everything it needed to reduce its emissions by a certain amount by a certain point in time, it'd make no difference to the issues that Matt Keane and others point to, you know, the cyclones, floods and algal blooms. The reality is the data is, frankly, not supporting what they're pushing for, and that's why we did what we did with regard to 2035. It's fantasy land and we need to actually make sure we have a strong position on that, and that's what we did last week.
Well, Susan Lee and Ted O'Brien have criticised the government's pathway towards net zero and said they're going to oppose it. But when the coalition doesn't have a policy at all, indeed the coalition's still trying to work out whether or not they agree with pursuing net zero, it makes the coalition's criticism a little hollow, doesn't it? Because the government can simply shoot back, well, the coalition don't even know what they believe.
Well, I'd say to Australia, take hope from what we did last week. We could have sat there and said, let's take our time and read the documents. Let's give the government the benefit of the doubt. Let's try and avoid them using the names that they apply to those who disagree with their ridiculous policies. But instead, what we did is we said, no, we are not going to sign up to this madness with regard to 2035. And so I say, while we work through, I hope in short order, what we do with regard to 2050 and their net zero target, take hope from what we've done. Australia needs policy that gets the balance right, that we can rebuild industry, that we can actually bring down power prices. This fanciful idea that we would be able to bring down power prices under this 2035 target is just bunkum. As I say, I've read the documents that the Prime Minister and Chris Bowen and others rely on, and I cannot see how they in any way say that power prices are coming down and it's going to be cheaper to do business and live in this country under their plan.
No, and they can't even answer that simple question themselves. John, I want to show you this video from Liberal MP Andrew Hastie about manufacturing in Australia. Have a look at this.
I don't know about you, but I have to remind myself that we used to make cars in this country. Check this car out. It's a beautiful piece of craftsmanship. It's horsepower, it's heritage, it's grit, and it's an Aussie car made by Aussie workers for the Australian people. We used to make complex things in this country, and both the Liberals and Labor have let us down in the past by letting the car industry disappear from our shores. And now Anthony Albanese and Labor are trying to cut us off forever from our proud heritage. They want to fill our streets with silent, soulless cars made in China, packed with tech that we didn't design and that we don't control.
Jono, Andrew Hastie is not only condemning Labor, but also his own party for letting the car industry die. Two questions. First, is he right? And second, is Andrew Hastie a more efficient leader than the one you already have?
Look, is he right? I think it's fair to say that successive governments of both colours have let this country down. We wouldn't be where we are today if we didn't have policy issues that have led to where we're at. I cannot just say that the state our country is in is just because of the last 3 years. I'd love to do it, but that would be dishonest. There are policies we had in the last term of government, the 9 years leading up to it, that, of course, were not good for our country. And we've talked about some of those already that have led to higher power prices, rigid IR laws and the red tape madness that we deal with that makes it impossible to invest in this country. If you're going to choose between here and Nicaragua, for example, I think I know where most of these investors are going to go. In terms of leadership, look, Susan is our leader. Susan will lead us to the next election. Andrew is an amazing contributor. He's a great mate of mine. He's honest, he's direct, and he's telling it how it is, and he performs an amazing job as part of our shadow cabinet. He'll continue to do that, and I certainly love backing in what he has to say because, as I said before, he's honest and direct, and that's what Australians need and want, and he's a part of our Liberal team, and I reckon he's going to give Labor a run for their money in the job that he's doing now.
Well, he's not only honest and direct, he actually has a position on net zero, which is refreshing as well. The PM has arrived in New York, where he will this week recognise a Palestinian state. Jono, that an Australian PM would do this while 48 Israeli hostages are still being held captive is pretty disgusting.
Of course it is. They don't like to just chuck out the window decades of bipartisanship on this issue, as they have, to side with a group of people that are singing the praises of terrorists and completely cutting off hope for those who are still trapped in the tunnels underneath Gaza City, and not even allowing any peace process that could be on foot and should be allowed to run its course to conclude before they rush to this recognition of Palestinian statehood is terrible foreign policy. And I think it's going to do damage to our credibility in the international community. But what's worse, it sends a terrible message to those freedom-loving Western democracies around the world and Jewish people around the world, including at home, that our government would recognise people that just show absolute disdain for Israel, for Jewish people around the globe. And I think there are some terrible things that will come from this, but sadly it's what our Prime Minister, in his ideological madness, is pursuing.
Yeah, it's just an embarrassment on the world stage. Jonathan Duniam, good to catch up with you. Thanks very much for joining us on the show this evening. Appreciate it.